What started as a normal day for 25-year-old Michelle Leng would end up in a set of bizarre circumstances when she seemingly vanished into thin air. When the horrifying truth came to light, a twisted tale of abuse and family betrayal would emerge. Michelle Leng was born on January 29, 1991, in China's Sichuan province. As is common in China, Michelle had two names. Her English name was Michelle, and her Chinese was Meng Mei. She grew up in the town of Chengdu and excelled in her studies from a young age. As Michelle grew older, she had her heart set on pursuing her higher education in Australia. This dream came through for her in 2011 when she was accepted to study business at the University of Technology, Sydney. Michelle's aunt, her mother Mei Zheng's sister, also lived in Sydney with her husband and daughter, which made Michelle's parents feel more at ease with their daughter's move. At least she would have more familiar faces around to help her get settled and navigate this new landscape. Michelle soon arrived in sunny Sydney and settled into her aunt's spare room. Now it was time to put all her energy into her studies. Michelle successfully obtained her first degree before moving on to her second. Tragically, she wouldn't live to finish it. It was Friday, April 21, 2016. Michelle had been in Sydney for a good few years and was thriving. After finishing her classes, she wished her friends goodbye and mentioned she would be going downtown to do some shopping before heading home. We know Michelle followed through with this plan as she was captured in CCTV footage walking through Pitt Street Mall. Michelle met with a friend for a spot of lunch at the Sydney Fish Markets and then got on a train headed for home, which was in Campsie. CCTV spotted Michelle at 4:32 p.m. as she exited the Campsie station. Then, at 4:42 p.m., she was seen on surveillance footage at her aunt's apartment. Michelle Leng was never seen alive again. She did have contact with a friend that night, and the pair spoke on the phone. Michelle's friend later recalled that nothing seemed amiss. Michelle was her usual self and said nothing that would raise alarm bells or cause concern. Michelle sent one final message before seemingly disappearing into thin air. A few days passed with no mention of Michelle's disappearance until her aunt arrived home from a business trip in Wollongong. Her husband, Derek Barrett, picked her up at Hertzville Railway Station at around 10 p.m. on April 24th. Michelle's aunt asked her husband about Michelle, as her phone calls had gone unanswered. Derek explained that he had been in the apartment for much of the past 3 days, but since he was working late into the night and sleeping through much of the day, he had assumed she was either on campus or out with friends. Michelle's aunt and her cousin, who arrived home the day before after staying over with friends, began searching Michelle's room. They hoped something inside could point them to her whereabouts. After finding nothing useful, they looked through her personal computer. Again, they found nothing that told them where Michelle could be. Derek began calling Michelle's number but received no response. The next day, on April 25th, Michelle Leng was reported missing. Derek told the officers at Campsie Police Station that he last physically saw Michelle at around midnight on April 21st, but spoke to her over the phone at around 10 a.m. the following day. A search effort was launched, ending shortly after with a tragic discovery. Michelle Leng's body had already been found the day before she was even reported missing. A hiker was trudging along the scenic route that overlooked Snapper Point, over 100 kilometers away from Campsie. When they glanced down, something caught their attention. Upon closer inspection, the hiker realized a body was floating in Snapper Point's blowhole. The authorities were contacted immediately, and a recovery team was dispatched. After a few hours, they managed to recover the body. She had no means of identification, and since no missing persons report had been filed yet matching her description, she was initially classified as a Jane Doe. When an officer saw the missing person report filed for Michelle Leng on April 25th, a possible link was established between her and the Jane Doe found at Snapper Point. On April 26th, officers arrived at Michelle's aunt's apartment. They mentioned they were looking into this possible connection and wanted to take DNA samples from Michelle's aunt to positively identify whether she was the woman found floating in the ocean. Derek seemed on edge throughout this interaction. It appeared he was trying to guide the conversation as he wanted it to go, keeping Michelle's aunt from speaking much. He told the officers that Michelle was seeing a man she met online, which was a potential lead. The officers left, not thinking much of the interaction. Derek and Michelle's aunt were asked to return to the station and give statements about Michelle's disappearance. During Derek's statement, he mentioned something odd. After providing a detailed account of the night's events, including what pajamas Michelle was wearing, he mentioned that she kept a rubber stopper under her door, "So you can't get in," he said. He also gave a detailed account of the days before Michelle was reported missing. He had messaged her on April 23rd, asking if she would be home for dinner and mentioning he was a bit worried. He then called her parents, who lived on the Central Coast, and said he hadn't been up there in weeks. Derek continued to tell officers of him watching television and ordering takeout, not going anywhere exciting, before picking up his wife at the station. Derek mentioned that he had spoken to friends of Michelle via her social media accounts when looking on her devices for clues. The friends allegedly told him Michelle had been seeing a man from Wollongong and a German man. All while Derek was telling them this, he seemed concerned. That is not how you would expect someone with a missing family member to act. A few days later, reports confirmed that 25-year-old Michelle Leng was the Jane Doe found at Snapper Point. Her autopsy results revealed some brutal facts about her death. Michelle was viciously attacked with a knife and stabbed over 20 times. Her cause of death was a deep cut to the throat. Injuries to her hands showed Michelle had tried to defend herself. She also suffered multiple blunt force traumas. The examiner believed these were inflicted post-mortem, likely when her body was being disposed of. Following the identification, Derek was brought in again for questioning. When informed of the news that Michelle was murdered, he responded, "We suspected that for a couple of days at least."